Welcome to the Awesomers.com podcast. If you love to learn, and if you're motivated to expand your mind, and heck, if you desire to break through those traditional paradigms and find your own version of success, you are in the right place. Awesomers around the world are on a journey to improve their lives and the lives of those around them. We believe in paying it forward, and we fundamentally try to live up to the great Zig Ziglar quote, where he said, "You can have everything in your life you want if you help enough other people get what they want." It doesn't matter where you came from, it only matters where you're going. My name is Steve Simonson, and I hope you will join me on this awesomer journey.
If you're launching a new product manufactured in China, you will need professional, high-resolution, Amazon-ready photographs. Because Simo Global has a team of professionals in China, you will oftentimes receive your listings photographs before your product even leaves the country. This streamlined process will save you the time, money, and energy needed to concentrate on marketing and other creative content strategies before your item is in stock and ready for sale. Visit simoglobal.com to learn more, because a picture should be worth 1,000 keywords.
Hey everybody, Steve Simonson back again with another Awesomers.com podcast. And today is episode number 89 of our podcast series. All you need to do is run on over to awesomers.com/89 to find out some of today's show notes and details, and maybe even a transcript. Sometimes we throw transcripts in for you, make them easy to search. So today is a different kind of episode. We call it Story Time with Steve. Now, what this means is I'm going to tell you kind of a story and experience, and then try to give you a couple takeaways or maybe action steps that you can think about as it relates to your own business, your own life, from this story. So this is a story that I'm going to tell you, and these stories are not in any particular order. It's just kind of what strikes my fancy at the time. And in particular, today I need to record an episode so that we can keep the publishing train running. As you may know, we've already published 88 episodes. That's a lot. And we've done that in 88 days, which is destroying my life, frankly. It's a lot of time, and definitely is something that, although I enjoy it when I'm doing it, the things that it's pushing to the side are definitely starting to add up. So my point is, in story time, I'm going to just kind of take you through an experience that I had, tell you why I thought it was important, and then, of course, you'll be able to investigate yourself whether or not you find that to be interesting. So, first of all, this story is back in probably about the 2009 range. I had helped a Chinese company buy some assets of a bankrupt company, and they were moving those assets from an old lease to a new lease. So just in terms of context, they had to get out of the old lease in a relatively fast order, and when you do that, that puts a lot of pressure on getting a new lease. Now, this is a Chinese-owned company. They had no experience negotiating leases. They didn't know where to look. They didn't know what was the right type of location or the types of things that should be contemplated. So this is a whole separate story, but let's just say they convinced me to help them. So I did. So the first thing that we did is we wanted to reduce the amount of footage required. So we only wanted to lease a 20,000 square foot facility. So this was a light snack compared to the 60,000 feet that the acquired company held. And we want to do that just for efficiency and to kind of have the fixed overhead be as low as possible. So with lower space, you're going to have challenges trying to squeeze everything in, but we felt confident with our methods of stacking and racking that we would be okay. Further, we had a team that was working out of the old location, small team, maybe 10 people, and we needed them to move as well. And when you're trying to do all of this really fast, this is where negotiations kind of work against you. We'll talk more about negotiations perhaps in future episodes, but one of the ideal situations, if you're negotiating for something, is to go into the situation where you can walk away, right? Where you can just say, nope, not for me, and you have time on your side. In this case, time was working against us. We did not have time on our side, and we needed to kind of get this dialed in. So that was something working against us and working for the would-be landlords that we were checking out. So because this was 20,000 square feet, one of the little tricks of the trade, if you will, is if you're setting up a a warehouse and you're going to bring in a bunch of containers, it's smart to put it as close to the port as you can and skipping any way stations if possible. And I'll just give you a little English on that, not to dive into too much detail, but on some types of containers, you can overweight them in China, and then if they don't hit a weigh station in the US, then you're probably going to get away with a little extra weight on that container. Now, this is something not that I came up with, but this is what the Chinese factory was insistent upon. And so to meet their requirement, not having a weigh station in between the port and the warehouse was an essential component. Now, why do people overweight containers? Just as a little side note, they do it to get the lower cost per unit for shipping, right? Your shipping cost essentially stays the same, and the number of units kind of increases because you added the extra weight in there, and that means the lower cost per unit for shipping. And we're talking about small percentages. Today, it's harder and harder to get that to work in China because they have much more enforcement with weight restrictions inside of China for their roads. And we've had that strategy blow up on us later, just as a little aside, where we were trying to ship a bunch of inbound containers on railways, and a lot, like somewhere in Texas, they finally got weighed and had to be broken down into smaller shipments. And that costs a lot more than the simple saving. So one little lesson here is that, as always, beware of unintended consequences. The China factory was so insistent upon we have to overweight these containers, and they didn't really think about what happens when things go inland or when the enforcement happens in a bigger way. And ultimately, it ends up costing them more money. So that's, one little lesson is, and this is one of my axioms, is beware of unintended consequences. When you do something, it can have a reaction that maybe you won't like at the end of the day. So anyway, back to looking for this location. So we found a few locations, and in this case, it was down close to the Seattle area. And so we were going to bring things into the Port of Seattle or Port of Tacoma, and we were going to land them in a little town called Kent or Tukwila, Washington, which is, for those Amazon sellers, Kent is where Amazon just put up a huge facility. It's where Boeing has long time had big warehouses. Although they've surrendered some of those over the past 10, 15 years, they've had massive aircraft construction down in the Kent Valley. So we found a few buildings, and we kind of zeroed in on one, and it actually was two spaces of 10,000 square feet side to side. And so we went to the landlord and we said, hey, we would like this space, but we need to be able to drive our forklifts back and forth. So we'd sure appreciate it if you could just, cut a big hole in the back of the building, where the two areas are connected. Just imagine the back area, we'd cut like a 20-foot high by 20-foot wide hole in it, so the forklifts could go through. And in actuality, one side of the building we were going to heat, and the other side we were not going to heat. So we put some of the just plastic that is kind of like draping plastic, little sleeves of plastic, and then the forklifts can just drive right through them. They can see what's on the other side because it's clear, and it keeps the temperature locked in. And we were willing to pay for the plastic stuff, which was $2,000 or $3,000. I don't remember. So we've got that big hole that needs cut out, and we said, hey, in the front, just put in a little door as well, just so that the office workers in the front can get back. We were going to build a showroom in one part of the heated building, and then have little offices in the other part to house 5 or 10 people. I think 10 initially, and then it would go down to just office workers, and then the showroom and sales team would be in the heated part of the main structure. So anyway, long story short, we got into it with the landlord. They said, okay, great. We finally agreed to a per square foot rate that was reasonable to us. And they said it will be something like $35,000 for the construction that you want done. And as the landlord, we are willing to pay for that. So we'll just give you a $35,000 credit, and then you carry on and you pay for it going forward. And because I've done a lot of leases, I said, no. It's your contractor. They said they can have it done in 45 days. They said it would cost $35,000. You manage them. We don't want to have anything to do with that part of it. The landlord pushed back a couple ways, but again, I've negotiated dozens and dozens and dozens of leases in my time. Probably been a part of at least 50 or 60 leases and lease discussions. And I just stood strong. I said that is one area you don't want to get. So this is one big key takeaway. If you're ever negotiating for a lease and you want tenant improvements done, put those on the landlord, have the landlord do them and manage them. And you're going to find out why as we go farther into this story. But first, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how this conversation and negotiation went with the landlord. We'll be right back after this.
Catalyst 88 was developed to help entrepreneurs achieve their short and long-term goals in e-commerce markets by utilizing the power of shared entrepreneurial wisdom. Entrepreneurship is nothing if not lessons to be learned. Learn from others, learn from us. I guarantee that we will learn from you. Visit catalyst88.com because your success is our success. Giddy up.
Okay, we're back again, everybody, and we're talking about well, we call it Steve's story time, and we're talking about an old lease that I was negotiating on behalf of a Chinese factory who had acquired this company. So remember I said earlier in the story that we were under time pressure. We needed to move quick, but we had just kind of negotiated this tenant improvement work that was going to take, they said, 45 days. And anytime a contractor tells you a time frame or even a price, you have to really treat that with suspicion because well, it's my experience that construction projects don't always come in on time. And one of my other axioms is it always costs more and it takes longer. And that certainly was a factor here. So with the landlord, we said, I tell you what, you guys be responsible for the tenant improvement work because they're your contractors. They came in and gave you the bid. They gave you the timeline. And but we really need to get early entry into this building. So give us the right to go ahead and occupy right now, and we'll just stay in the little office area, and we'll put some stock on either side of the building. We'll just keep our forklifts separate and try to load out of each side of the building for the time being. Very inefficient. In general, you want to have, in a structure like that, you want to have inbound doors and outbound doors, and especially when you're bringing in inventory into two different areas. It doesn't make sense to try to run an in and an out on both sides if you don't need to. That's why we wanted the doors cut. But nevertheless, even being less efficient, that was a way to begin. So we started moving truckloads and truckloads of inventory over. And I don't remember how many trucks, but it was 30, 40, 50 truckloads of material from point A to point B. And we're getting it all slotted in there. So we have this right of early entry. Now, one of the other things, as I said, again, all just based on experience, and I'm sharing that experience with you, is not only is the landlord responsible for the contractor's budget and timing, but we're not going to initiate the lease until the contractor is done and until we are completed with the punch list, which is kind of the final checkpoint of a finished construction project. So once the punch list is done, then the lease will initiate. And we said, because you guys said it would only be 45 days, to kind of hold your feet to the fire and let everybody know that the stakes are high, for every day that you're late delivering the facility, we want a day and a half of free rent, basically. Now, where did I come up with the day and a half? A day and a half is kind of an arbitrary number. You can ask for 2 days, you can ask for 1 day, you may get no days. But in our case, we agreed on a day and a half as a penalty for any day that went, that they were over. So, for example, if they were 10 days over, we would get 15 days of free rent. And this purpose, I'm sorry to stammer on you there, but the purpose of this is to get alignment on the objectives with the landlord, the contractor, and the tenant. Everybody wants the contractor out of there as quick as possible. And the contractor, they basically get paid on a bid basis, so they want to get out as quick as they can. And of course, the landlord wants to collect rent. So that's alignment of interest. So the big takeaway here is when you're negotiating, as long as things are aligned with mutual interest, then it shouldn't be that hard of a request. In this context, for example, when we said to the landlord, hey, we really need early occupancy. This is a desperate, situation for us. We probably wouldn't use the word desperate, by the way, but we pointed out the urgency of the situation. They agreed, and that was kind of them saying, hey, we really want your business. We're going to give you early occupancy. We said, hey, we really want the construction to go fast. So you guys manage it. You handle your own contractor. And as a little incentive, if you're late, you got to give us some free rent. And so that will kind of make everybody, again, with aligned interests. So anyway, so we ended up moving in and got early occupancy. The contractor kind of twiddled their thumbs. It took them a little time to get permits. And so we were probably in the facility around 30 days plus before they even began. And they had estimated around 45 days for construction. So unless they can do the construction in 15 days, we're already going to be ahead of the game when it comes to getting some free rent. And by the way, during early occupancy, no rent is due. So these are not uncommon things to negotiate on lease, by the way. None of this was, something that, I made up by myself. This was all just kind of experiential stuff. And remember that landlords, they think about the big long-term picture, right? So one of the countermeasures to that lease is the lease when it initiated. That's when the time of the lease, I don't remember if it was a 3-year, 5-year, whatever it was, but that's when the time initiated. Excuse me. So what that means is if they ended up having a lease, let's just say it took them, a month to complete construction, our lease would initiate that month later, and that's when we would start paying rent, and that's when the lease, 36 or 60 month term would begin based on that date. So the landlord's always thinking about long term anyway. All right, so anyway, as we get into the project, the contractor shows up and they say, okay, we're getting started. They start doing some of the things that they need to do. And it was relatively light construction, right? The quote they gave of $35,000 to kind of cut a hole in the back and cut a hole in the front. They were going to put up some little stub walls inside of the new showroom area so that there was a very clear delineation between the showroom and the warehouse, and a little studio area. So it was a very basic operation. And for commercial contractors, we didn't expect that it was be any big deal at all. In fact, it was still quite reasonable. They could have it knocked down in 15 days. So anyway, they show up, they start working, they're going slow, and then like you can just tell the contractor, he's rubbing his head, he's frustrated. We're communicating with them every day, but they don't really tell us what's up at first. So finally, the contractor shows up. He's got the landlord with him, or the rental agent. They use agencies and so forth to do leases of big commercial places. And basically they go, well, it turns out that big wall in between the structures, that's a shear wall. And so we don't really want to put those holes in that we promised to put in, the big one for the forklifts and the little one for the people. And I'm like, well, I hear you. I don't know what a shear wall means from a construction standpoint, but my impression is that it just means that you're going to have to reinforce it a bit. So, c'est la vie. What are you going to do? You could tell I had my empathy on full blast that day. So they didn't really get into any of the details. So anyway, they keep carrying on, and now they're like, well, with the shear wall, it's going to take extra time. And we're saying, hey, we're going to stay out of your way, out of the construction zone as best we can. And we're living with the construction noise and whatever else because we had early occupancy, and it's fine. We've already gotten our internet and stuff installed. And in fact, we started with some wireless internet just so we could get into business the very first day. And we were slowly, building up our infrastructure within the building. So to fast forward, it turns out that, well, actually, I'm going to take another quick break. And when I come back, I'm going to tell you exactly how much money, or at least my best estimate from my brain, how much money the construction cost, how long the delays were, and what the net impact was in a financial sense to us as the leaseholder right after this break.
Hey Amazon Marketplace professionals, this is Parsimony ERP, and we get one question over and over. Can you please tell me exactly what Parsimony does? Well, we'll try, but this is only a 30-second spot, so we're going to have to hurry. Connect to your Seller Central account and pull all the new orders. Enter the orders with all customer data. Enter all of the Amazon fees and charges. Store them at the item level. Generate profit and loss reports at the SKU level. Automatically generate income statements. Handle multiple companies. Handle multiple brands. Handle multiple currencies. Facilitate budgets and forecasts. Store all customer interactions in a sophisticated CRM system. Manage your supply chain. Project and task management. Maintain an audit log. Hey, you get it. That's Parsimony, PARSIMONY.com. Parsimony.com. We've got that.
Okay, we're back again, everybody. We're drawing story time to a close here, but I want to just set the backdrop again so you have full context. We moved to a new facility. It's about 20,000 square feet. We signed a longer-term lease. I don't remember if it was 3 years or 5 years, to be honest with you. But it had some rights to extend beyond whatever the initial term was anyway. We got early occupancy. We also got, some other things that they needed to do, like put in a ramp and just various little TI things. TI means tenant improvement. So the contractor got a quote for that and said, hey, here, we'll just give you a credit towards your rent. You manage the contractor and you just pay the bill out of the money we give you, which sounds perfectly reasonable, right? But because of my experience, I'm like, no, they're your contractor. They gave you the quote. You manage it. Give us early occupancy. And by the way, if you're late on construction, just give us a day and a half of rent credit for every day you're late. So bear in mind that during early occupancy, we're paying no rent. And during the construction, we're paying no rent because that's still early occupancy. And then if they're late at any time, then we pay rent only after the day and a half penalty has been assessed for any late days. So anyway, the contractor finally comes to us not long into construction and goes, I don't know if you guys know this, but to do the shear wall, to do all this stuff, the new quote, the change orders and the new estimate is closer to $250,000, which ultimately the construction ended up going above $250,000, despite their original quote of $35,000. So right off the bat, to get the project completed to our specifications, if we just took the $35,000 in credit, we would have been, what is that, $215,000 in the hole if we had to continue to carry on with the construction or abandon our requirements, both of which are terrible outcomes for us, right? We wouldn't go into a location and sign a lease if we couldn't get it the way it needed to be for an efficient operation. And again, I've been around. I know what I'm doing, and the more importantly, the team that was involved with setting up the warehouse, they're brilliant and they understand how to move things efficiently. We really had a plan. So we said, no, landlord, you handle that and carry on. So now their construction costs around $250,000. And after 9 or 10 months of construction, they've delayed us by at least 10 months. It probably ended up being close to 1 year of a delay. So we had early occupancy the entire time. The rate on the lease was somewhere around $15,000 or $16,000 a month plus triple net. So it was probably close to $18,000 a month for the space. The space might have been bigger than 20,000 square feet. It might have been 15,000 on each side. Maybe it's 30,000 feet. Whatever it was a good rate per foot for this location. And every month that we were going, we were saving, $15,000 to $18,000, depending whether you want to include triple net. By the way, triple net is this was a building that was part of a long industrial complex, and that includes things like property taxes and the lot maintenance and kind of the common things, roof maintenance, things like that are common between all the tenants. They call that triple net. And basically, if you're ever negotiating a lease, be very, very wary of triple net and make sure you understand it and negotiate it away as best you can. So we're already, let's say, around a year into this thing, and we're saving 18 grand a month. So that's $200,000. We saved. We missed the exposure of the 215,000 of construction overruns, and then because they're a year late, they had to give us a year and a half of free rent, right? So for every day, we got a day and a half. So that's another year and a half. That was another almost $300,000 worth of free rent. So here's the takeaway. So by the way, if you do that 300,000, 200,000, and 215,000, you're at $715,000 roughly. Maybe my math is wrong. I'm just doing it in my head. But over $700,000 potentially of savings because we understood some of the moving parts when you negotiate a lease. Now, let me just tell you, the landlord hated my guts. They hated my guts because they would come in and say, hey, the construction's close enough. Let's just tie this off and sign here and start paying rent. And I would say, no. The construction's not done. Here's all the things you agreed to. They're not done yet. When they're done, we'll start. Be done tomorrow. I don't care. And what happened is, as always, in my experience, contractors get busy with other projects, and they didn't have any penalties for finishing late. So they would just get to us whenever they got to us. And again, they were a professional commercial contractor. I don't have anything against them. The work was fine. But they probably had lots of projects, and it took them an awful long time to get the job done. All of this is to say, and to reinforce some of those axioms. One, it always costs more and takes longer. And two, beware of unintended consequences. And fundamentally, when we negotiate, we try to do it from a point of alignment so that all people are aligned, but not necessarily a point of fairness, right? I want to make sure that I'm honoring my fiduciary responsibility. In this case, it was a Chinese-owned company. They still really don't have a full understanding of the $700,000 that I saved them, because they're like, hey, you got it under control, take care of it, thanks for everything. But that was a massive, massive amount of money that I saved them. And ultimately, all of that, the use of the facility and the time to build up the business and so forth after the acquisition was really, really additive to that business. So anyway, this has been Storytime with Steve. This is the time that I saved $700,000 on a lease, and and did it with, I would say, a positive spirit, although the landlord hated me at the end. It was plain as day. And what I kept telling the landlord, because at the end, things got heated. Not at the end. When we were trying to initiate the lease, things got heated about, is the punch list done or not, right? We're right down to the details. And I thought we were being fair. They felt we were being unfair, to be honest. But I said, no, we're being fair. And what I know is fair is written down in this lease agreement. And I guarantee you, if for 1 second of 1 ounce of 1 degree of anything on that lease, if we were out of compliance, they would have beat us down like you cannot believe. People will, they always talk nice and, oh, this and that, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what's written on the contract. So don't forget that, your rights are just as important as anybody else's. And that landlord who was trying to intimidate us and trying to, browbeat us into kind of signing early, it's like, honor your agreement and we'll honor ours. That's as simple as it is. And so there you go. That's the moral of the story. Know what you want. Be very careful of things that could be unknowns, like accepting $35,000 for construction that ends up costing $250,000 or more. Be mindful of the timing, and be mindful of just little tiny tweaks like early occupancy that may be able to help you get through a tense position. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this story time with Steve. We are going to remind you that this is episode number 89 of the Awesomers.com podcast series. And just go to awesomers.com/89 to see today's show notes and details. Thanks, everybody.
Empower. The name says it all. Connecting e-commerce entrepreneurs with great people, ideas, systems, and the services needed to stay business dynamic and to grow. Empowery is a network, a cooperative venture of tools and resources to make you better at what you do, because we love what you do. We are you. Visit empowery.com to learn more.
Well, we've done it again, everybody. We have another episode of the Awesomers podcast ready for the world. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you've enjoyed our program today. Now's a good time to take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this podcast. Heck, you could even leave a review if you wanted. Awesomers around you will appreciate your help. It's only with your participation and sharing that we'll be able to achieve our goals. Our success is literally in your hands. Thank you again for joining us. We are at your service. Find out more about me, Steve Simonson, our guest, team, and all the other Awesomers involved at awesomers.com. Thank you again.